You know how excited that I am that you're our first guest. Um, yeah,
Yes.
super excited. So we have been talking about this for a while, and I guess the whole purpose of the show is to really be able to talk about, have these authentic
Mhm.
conversations about what brings us into therapy. What do we think it is, right? Our expectations
Yeah.
around it versus the reality of it. And so, you were actually one of the first people that I thought about because as a therapist, I know my experience on
Mhm.
both ends of it, but I think it's really important for people to see people who aren't necessarily therapists and see what their reactions
Mhm.
have been and what their journey has been like. So, with that, I want you to feel as comfortable to share as much or as little as you want
Yeah,
to.
no, we're here. Let's
But one
hear
of
it
the
all.
first places that I want to kind of start, let's
Let's
do
do
it.
it. If we're
Let's
gonna
do
do it, let's do
it.
it.
So I want to kind of start. If we're gonna do, we're gonna do it all the
Right.
way,
Right.
right? What was the incident? What was the moment for you? What was the thing that happened that made you say, I need to go to therapy?
Yeah. I've thought about this, and for me, I don't know that there was one particular instance. I feel like there was a culmination of things. Uh, let's see. I started coming to therapy July of last year, 2020, and I was just at a place where I don't know, I just didn't feel like myself. I didn't really know what was wrong. I just knew something wasn't right. And I have a psychology degree, so I've always been a fan of like mental health and therapy and all the things. But because of finances and insurance and whatever else, it hasn't always been available to me. And so with the pandemic and everything last year, I got a postcard in the mail from my insurance company and it said, "Hey, you should try this online teledoc, you know, therapy." And so I was like, "Oh, great. Yes, now is the time." And so that was a bit of the catalyst that really prompted me to start going to therapy because I'm like, "Oh, great. Now it's finally available. I can finally do this thing that I've always wanted to do." Like I said, I knew something wasn't right with me internally. I felt like I was just sort of moving through life with no clear direction, just kind of going day by day by day, feeling really blasé, for lack of a better term. And I didn't like that. That's not how I typically operate. I tend to have a bit more of a zest for life. I love to laugh, smile, and be joyful in a sense. And when that wasn't my everyday experience, I was like, okay, something is wrong and we need to figure it out. And so when I got that postcard, it was just like, you've been feeling it. Now is the time. Like it's a minimum to no investment on your end, outside of what we pay for our insurance. But so like just do it. And so I did it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like if I'm thinking back to where you were at that time, it
Mhm.
sounds like you're saying essentially you felt like I'm alive, right? So it wasn't like things happening necessarily that were like, oh my gosh, my life is a tragedy, but I'm alive, but I'm not really living.
Yes,
My
absolutely.
zest for life is gone.
Absolutely.
I'm here.
Yeah, and I was
Okay.
in a place, where I was witnessing everyone else's life sort of progress and seemingly, like, move forward, and I felt like I was really stuck in the place that I've seemingly always been, and I think within a couple of our first sessions, I was like, Sheree, like, I don't think I'm depressed, but maybe I am, and probably was, you know? And so, yeah, I didn't have that zest. I didn't feel like I was living. I was alive, but not really living at all. Mhm.
Yeah. I saw a quote just the other day and it said, it was a comment, something on social media, and someone said, Black women often don't recognize when they're anxious or depressed. They just look at it as they're failing,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And and I thought back to conversations we had early on, and I think that kind of encapsulates that, like conversations around like, where did you think you'd
Mhm.
be at this stage in your life and where are
Yeah.
you, and then where's the dissonance coming from at where you are versus where you expected to be, where you wanted to be.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. At the time I was 32. 32, 33. And by then you have the societal pressures of you should be married, you should have these kids, you should, be thriving in your career, be living on your own, like you just doing the whole adulting thing and rocking it out. And I looked up and I was like, I have none of those things. Like I'm 32. For whatever reason, I'm still living with my mom. And I didn't feel like I had a career. I just have a job. I get a check. Not married, no prospects, like in the rafters, no kids. And so from the outside looking in, from all the things that I thought I would have by the time I reached, my big age of 32, I had none of those things. And so I felt like a complete failure. Because I'm just like, what have you been doing with your life all this time, all these years? Like what have you been doing? And it didn't help that my best friend had just gotten married, and I'm looking at her, and she and I have always had a similar, not exactly the same, but similar life course, in that we typically would go through things kind of parallel. But then it's like she veered off, and it's like, okay, wait a minute now. I don't have my partner with it, in this anymore. Like it's just me now. And that thing hit me like a ton of bricks. And so that quote is absolutely 100% true. I really did feel like a failure, like as an adult and as a woman, like I did. I felt like a failure. Yeah.
When you think, I was thinking
Mhm.
about it. I was thinking about some of the things you used to say when you first started. But when you think about when you first started your journey on
Mhm.
in therapy, what did you think it was going to be like? Like you get this thing for
Yeah.
Teledoc, right? And you're like, and Teledoc, for those who don't know, is one of the platforms. It's like companies will have platforms where they provide for little to no cost psychiatric and other mental health benefits to companies, right? So it's MD Live, Teledoctors, many other ones, and so they will provide access through their telehealth
Mhm.
platform, and so different people can contract to work with them, and so that is how I came to know uh, Kimber. And so when you think about finding somebody randomly on on this
Yeah.
platform, right? What did you think it was going to be like? What did you think your journey in therapy would be like versus what it actually was?
Yeah, I think I thought it was gonna be a lot more sterile than what it was. And what I mean by that is I didn't think I was going to relate to my therapist as much as I did. I knew when I started, I had a mind of what I wanted. Like I wanted a black female who was Christian, because I knew a lot of those things fully encompassed who I am as a person, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time trying to explain who I was, like foundationally. Like I wanted someone who already understood that. But coming into it, I didn't really have a lot of faith that I would find it. I thought I'll have to end up or settle for um, an older white gentleman. And then I was like, "Oh gosh, he's never gonna understand me. He's never gonna get me." But I did a fairly thorough search between the providers in Teladoc. And me being me, I looked it up also on Psychology Today and their directory. And then when I found you, Sheree, I went to your website and I was like, oh, okay, great. I think she may work out.
Oh, you
Oh,
checked
I
up
did
on me.
research. I was like, if I'm gonna be comfortable, spilling the deepest parts of my heart with someone, like I need to be able to make sure I can trust you. Um, and so I need to do my research. So yeah, so I was thinking I was gonna have to spend a lot of time explaining, what certain phrases or terms that I would use meant. I'll have to explain more of my experience as a Black woman and how it related to current societal times, because that was in the thick of all the social unrest with Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and all of those unfortunate occurrences. And so um, I thought I was going to have to spend so much more time explaining that part of my heart to someone. But then I found you, Sheree, and I in hindsight, I'm like, man, Sheree is exactly what I needed, because you are obviously all the things I wanted. You're a Black Christian female, but you didn't always provide service like from a Christian lens. per se. You just understood, and because that's your background, like you got what I was trying to say, even if I didn't say it. And so therapy ended up being much more like home. I think in a sense, it felt like home, and in that I didn't have to explain who I was, just how I was feeling, and that was understood. I felt seen, I felt heard, and fully supported in therapy because, long story short, you got me. Like you get who I am, and that's what I wanted. So yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. It was a journey that we went on together, and I would always say to you, like, thank you so much for
yeah,
trusting me on this journey, right? Because when you're in therapy from the client's perspective, you get, and as a client I used to get, you get what that person is able to offer you, like a safe space,
hmm,
right? Not being judgmental, sometimes insight,
hmm,
right? Tips and tools. But the other end of it is, as a therapist, what I get is I feel like that's a sacred space you allow me
yeah,
into. That's a lot of trust that a client puts in a person to be able to hold space for
hmm,
them, know they're not being judged, be able to bear their deepest, darkest
hmm,
truth, and then be able to say, now this is what I have. Are you going to run away from this, or can you help me walk through this
yeah,
process? And that what I start saying I want may be different down the line even, and are you okay with
hmm.
that? And so I think there, like, I just felt an immense amount of gratitude because from the beginning, I saw all this, like, bursting out of you, like, all this creativity, all
Hmm.
this insight, awareness, and I'm like, "She's frustrated with not fully walking in her purpose, but when was she ever allowed to? When was she ever given permission to? When was she ever instructed to do
Hmm.
so? Or was she just instructed to comply?" And I it was just like watching somebody peel an
Yeah,
onion and getting to, like, the heart of it, and you did that work. So when you think back to
oof,
then, right, and the work you started doing back
yeah,
then,
yeah,
right, and you think to
hmm.
now, where you are in your life now, what you have done, how you have changed, this new iteration of you, of
Hmm.
Kimber, how do you feel like you've grown through this journey? Like, what has this process been like for you, you doing the work in therapy that you needed?
It's funny that you say the new iteration of Kimber. A lot of my friends have been commenting on the new Kimber 2.0. And I'm just like, okay, like, yes, that's true. I do feel like I'm an upgraded version of my post-pandemic Kimber, like she is not with it, but she is with it at the same time. I feel like, how do I want to phrase this? I feel like I have opened up. I think so much of my not feeling alive in the past, or not fully living in the past, was because I closed myself off so much. I didn't allow myself to like fully feel all the things that my heart is prone to feeling. I can be super sensitive. I cry at the drop of a dime. If we stay up here too long today, I'm probably gonna cry at some point. um, but like I didn't give myself, like you said, that permission to fully be myself. And I think going through therapy and like really understanding what you said, like I was never given the permission to do that. Like I was only told like this is what you're supposed to do. You do this, nothing more, nothing less. Like you comply, you follow the rules, and that's that. But for someone like me who is naturally born to like kind of push back against the rules or at least ask questions about why this rule is here, um, therapy really helped me to just be comfortable with who I am as a person at my core, and really peel back all of those falsehoods or lies that I attached of what I thought I had to be. But therapy really helped me to just be who I am without any pressure from anyone else of their perspective. Like I could just be myself, and that was enough, you know. So yeah, I feel like I've opened up a lot more. I'm 1,000% much more comfortable being myself, and my confidence I feel like has kind of gone through the roof a little bit. um, and that I'm like, "This is me,
Okay.
and if you like it or you don't," and not in like a flippant way per se, but in a way of I'm not gonna shrink back. I'm not gonna be stop being who I am to make you more comfortable. Like you and your comfort is your job, and me and mine is mine. And so I think I have a clear portrait or a clear boundary now of other people's perceptions and making sure that they maintain ownership of that. Their perspective is not my job, honestly. And as long as I'm happy with who I am, then, that's it. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Yeah, I feel like I was rambling.
It
Yeah.
absolutely does, but then it made me think of it, an extra part
Okay.
of that. When I think back to you and your journey, a couple of the themes come up for
Hmm.
me. One, true ownership of being fully and authentically
Hmm.
you, because you are fully and authentically you
Hmm.
now, and giving yourself that permission. The other thing that comes up for me is being able to, ask for what you
Hmm.
need with an expectancy that you'll receive
Hmm.
it. Because you were the helper, you were not necessarily the helped, right? Things weren't necessarily reciprocated the way you gave them, and then you're like, "Have I created space to
Hmm.
say what I need? Do people even know what I need? Do I know what I need and what that
Yeah.
looks like?" And 3, there have been concrete changes in your life, things that you have done now where it felt like, to me at least, that what your expectation was for you is starting to measure up with the reality, the actuality of what's occurring in your
Yeah.
life. So there's less incongruence between what you want for yourself and where you're at
Right.
versus when you first
Hmm.
started. Like you, it may not feel like a 180 to you, but who you were
Yeah.
then, what you accepted then, you flipped it, and it's like, "I'm no longer just accepting this, I'm gonna walk in this boldness of, I know who I am and what I'm deserving
Mhm.
of, and then I'm gonna make the choices and do the things to get me to where I want to be so that my life is indicative of the work that I'm putting
Yeah.
in."
Yeah, I think that's 1,000% true. I think last year prior to therapy, I was in a very passive part of life, where I just accepted whatever someone gave because I didn't feel empowered to be able to make demands or, tell someone what I needed. It was more of a this is what they're offering, this is what I feel like I have to take. But now I'm just like, that's not true. I feel like so much more of an active participant of my life, um, kind of accepting the things that I can change and changing them, and then being okay with the things that I can't. And shout out to the Serenity Prayer, like being okay with letting those things go, but just being comfortable, like learning how to ask for what I need. It's still a process. We are not there yet, but we are getting there slowly but surely. And if nothing else, I can push back and be like, no, that's not what I want. And which I feel like is a good middle ground until we get to the place of where I'm like, this is exactly what I want, da 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 da, and you should do this. Um, but yeah, so I feel like a much more active participant of my life and knowing that this is my life to live and I don't have to, I guess, abide by anybody else's rules for that. Like I get to design the life that I want, and I want to do that.
That's a word. But what I was gonna end with is, if there's somebody out there, Kimber, because I've talked to Kimber endlessly about how she will be a catalyst for change for
Yeah.
many, whether it's in her family, friend group, and then strangers, and then even the work she plans to do for so many
Yeah.
others. One, I want Kimber, if you feel comfortable and you want
Okay.
to, I want you to take time to share a couple of minutes on what you plan to do and how you plan to affect change or help
Sure.
people, if you'd like to
Okay.
share. But the other thing is for people contemplating, do I need therapy? What is it going to be like? Is it going to be useful? You know, does it make sense to go to therapy when I could just talk to my friends?
Mhm.
Someone that's thinking or contemplating it, or has had a bad experience? Because many people who went on to some of the platforms you had, they never know who they're going to get,
Yeah.
and maybe it was a bad experience. What would you say to that person?
Got it. So to that person, I would say go to therapy. Um, I tell people all the time, and Sheree, when we finished our therapy, I went on like this IG story rant of like go to therapy. If you feel like you don't need therapy, go to therapy. Just because of how, lack of a better term, therapeutic it is for your heart. I mean, your friends are your friends, and they are there to be sympathetic, empathetic, and like be a safe place for you. But they don't have the knowledge or the tools to be able to course correct and help put you on a healthy journey. Like they can be there, you guys can vent back and forth all day, every day. But then at the end of that, now what? Like you're still in that same spot. But if you go to therapy, someone who has psychological and scientific methods and strategies and tools that you can implement to help make your life more beneficial, like why would you rob yourself of that? Why would you not go and get that? If you have a headache for more than a day, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna call your doctor and say, "Hey, my head has been hurting. I need to let's fix this." Give your heart that same respect. If your heart is hurting, if your emotions are hurting, if you feel super anxious all the time, call somebody, like let's fix that. And so I would say go to therapy for people. If you know you need it, go. If you don't feel like you need it, go. People who have tried it in the past and it didn't quite work out, I'm sorry that that is your experience, but also like give it a chance and try out new therapists. Because just because that one person wasn't your person, that doesn't mean that your person is not out there. um, and when I started, I got lucky, and Sheree, you were the first person I saw, and I'm like, "Oh, she's it." And then we started, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, she really is it." But in the event that it didn't work out between, if it didn't work out between you and I, or I didn't feel comfortable after a number of sessions, I was totally prepared to be like, "Thank you for your time, but no, thank you. I think I don't want to continue to do this anymore." And so it's just more of a mentality thing, like stick with it, stick with the course, and don't stop until you get what you know you need. So my overarching advice is always go to therapy. Like no matter what, like go to therapy. Because even if your life up until this point has been good, you never know what curveballs life may throw at you. And you want to have systems and procedures in place to be able to properly work through those without falling into a depression or a dark space. So my advice is always going to be to go to therapy. 1000% go.